6 o'clock in London, 1 p.m. in New York, 1 a.m. in Hong Kong, 3 a.m. in Sydney, 10 a.m. in San Francisco, and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. My name is Patrick L. Young. The IPO-VID Livestream, Series 18, Episode 5, that makes it 107 in the aggregate, starts here. And let's go down under to Australia. Once mighty, now humbled, it seems almost ridiculous to think ASX sought to style themselves as a tech firm when they couldn't make their digital asset chess replacement work. Now the once leaders in blockchain exchange structure, innovation, and so forth have regressed away from blockchain entirely, despite being the first major name exchange in the world who were actually able to make the transition from floor trading to electronic all those years ago in 1987. It's a sad decline and another damning example of those who make monopoly milking their credo as a for-profit company and thus inevitably drop behind their peer group who remain innovative. Years late, with zillions wasted, the one-time self-styled tech firm have abandoned bringing the blockchain into their settlement upgrades. Whatever they may be, whenever these may happen, wherever they may be distributed. Over at MCX, still on tech, well, good grief, their MCX profit debacle has proved the peril of taking vendor change for granted. Egg on faces as profits tumble 85% in Q3 due to extra costs with having to retain the once rather unpleasantly bundled out the door and spurned 63 Moons kit of the MCX exchange founder Jignesh Shah's firm. A disastrous non-installation by TCS hurt the top line, bottom line, and reputation for competence of India's largest commodity market. Meanwhile, the European Union is under pressure over its clearinghouse recognition spurned spouse tantrum, as we describe their approach to Brexit. Just 8% of market professionals in London support the EU's plans to force Euro clearing ex-London into the Euro Union 27. At least it's good to see on a positive note pragmatism on regulation promoted by Adina Friedman as NASDAQ notes AI is nothing new to their systems. Wise counsel in the FT op-ed not to be overly prescriptive about new rules. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, that's the news this week, or at least the highlights from Exchange Invest, which of course you can subscribe to via exchangeinvest.com. I'd like to add a little brief personal note. As you know, we're actively involved in building the markets of the future around the world. And indeed, as you may recall, a team led by yours truly helped secure the license and build the ArrowAC crowdfunding and exchange platform headquartered in the Bahamas. As of the end of April, just to confirm publicly, I resigned as an advisor to the exchange due to non-payment of arrears. I sincerely hope the company can survive, but given our experience of non-payment, it is not, alas, clear what the future holds. I continue to be involved in new market builds the world over and look forward to continuing to shape the markets of the future. And that brings us very elegantly to our guests today. Two gentlemen who have been shaping the markets of the future for many years, Paul Constantinou and Pat Kenny. And they're going to be talking about an organization as well that's been shaping the markets of the Europe, primarily with an emerging market focus, the AFM 25 years on. AFM President Paul Constantinou is best known in the exchange business for his years selling trading systems to exchanges, particularly in the energy and commodity space with Trayport, amongst other vendors. AFM Chairman Patrick J I'm sorry, did I accuse you of being a Kennedy there? I do apologize. Patrick J. Kenny is Senior Vice President of Client Relations for CQG. His responsibilities include business development and working with account management. He joined the firm in July 2010, having previously been with Patsystems North America as an officer and managing director for a decade. Patrick has worked in the financial trading sector for more than 42 years. He spent 20 years at the CBOT on the floor trading. He's a board member of the FIA Tech Division, a board member of the Small Exchange, a very interesting retail-focused development in the US futures markets. He's the chairman of the AFM, the Association of Futures Markets, and president of Fontana on Geneva Lake in Fontana, Wisconsin. He has more than sometimes, according to my notes, been referred to as the most interesting man in the futures world, but mostly by John Lothian. Right, gentlemen, it's lovely to see you. Let's start with you, Paul. Do tell us, where in the world are you today?
I'm in the UK, and to be more specific, I'm in sunny Cornwall.
Sunny Cornwall,
And it is today
and many
yesterday.
other commodities in the past. Yes,
Yeah.
Cornwall, place where during the Napoleonic Wars there were actually more British soldiers stationed than there were historically fighting the French, as I seem to recall from my history. But there you go. Recollections may vary. Patrick Kenny, where in the world are you today? I have my masculine intuition would hazard a guess, but I'll let you tell us.
I'm in Fontana, Wisconsin, which is about 100 miles northwest of downtown Chicago, which I've commuted from daily for 26 years until the pandemic. And now, as you can see, I'm in the basement of my house. I do go down to Chicago still once every couple of weeks. But yeah, in beautiful Fontana, Wisconsin.
Beautiful Fontana, Wisconsin. Well, welcome, gentlemen, to the show. It's fabulous to see you today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching, don't forget to give us a little bit of love if you can. It helps with the artificial intelligence bots who want to push us up the rankings and therefore get this seen by more people. So, gentlemen, why don't we start with a simple question? I mean, how did you get into the business over time? Paul, let's start with you.
Which business?
Anything to do with vending and exchanges.
Oh my God. If we restrict it to exchanges, it's because I got out of the foreign exchange and such like trading technology, which I was involved in before. And I had a minor exposure. Strangely, I was at Bank of New York, Europe. I was vice president there for a couple of years. And I got an introduction to have a look at some of exchange activities by a mutual connection. That intrigued me. When I was then, well, I wasn't gardening, but I was on leave of similar nature. I got a call. The call resulted in an interview at Trayport. The interview at Trayport resulted in being engaged by them. And I had quite a few years there, 12 years, something like that. Although they're now renowned or famed or known for their success in the energy trading space, not just in Europe anymore either, which is good to see. I had some interesting projects with them where we took the software and actually made it work in a stock exchange and futures exchanges, all of the financial nature, not just commodity futures. And it was good times, and I learned a lot about the other exchanges in the world, not just the energy ones. So we were actually the incumbent supplier at New Zealand exchange, NZX, and we had some interesting bids at other large markets in that region. Patrick, that's not Mr. Kenny, but Patrick, our paths nearly crossed in Romania.
Absolutely. That's what I was just thinking. You installed into Cybex, and I ran the system when I was running the exchange. It was great.
That's right. I installed in CBOT, and well, people who know better than me did the installation, of course. But that was another surprise. We made it work. I think it worked quite well for what it had to do. But you know, there is a view that says sometimes it's better to stay focused on core business, don't have too many outliers, and so that's what happened to my activities in non-energy and commodity related exchanges. But an interesting time, and then yeah, of course, energy, it goes without saying, a lot of exposure there, a lot of time, and taking it into new territories, which was good. Since Trayport, I was involved in a couple of projects in Eastern Europe. I suppose I could say we had some, because there's been PR about it. We actually installed, not for Trayport, I had for another company I got involved with. We installed a trading system in Ukraine in the energy exchange, which is still running. And we also had good success in educating the Georgian market in the whys and wherefores of energy exchanges, OTC, and other such activities as part of the what do they call it? looking after Georgians' energy future is probably the best way to put it. So yeah, that was good times. They're all coming to an end now. Unfortunately, Ukraine for not so obvious reasons, but for obvious reasons. Georgia is coming through ultimately. So I got in by accident and had a good innings. And it was something I didn't think I'd do after foreign exchange and money markets since God knows when. But I remembered today, and that's pretty good for me to remember anything. I remembered that my first exposure to the financial markets, stock exchanges, brokers, and such like was in 1986 when I was working for Coopers, who are now Deloitte Coopers, I think. PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was worked on a project that was all part of the London Big Bang of 1986 that saw a jobbing firm called Bisgood Bishop get merged into County NatWest, the investment bank. And that, realizing today that really was my first exposure in the exchange world, albeit a very changing world at that time, perhaps like it is today.
Perhaps like it is today. Well, another man who's known a great deal of change during his career, Patrick, tell us all about how you managed to get into the business in Chicago all those years ago.
Yeah. Graduated from university, and I had a summer job that was the best job in the world. That was teaching people how to water ski and giving sightseeing trips on boats around Lake Geneva. But I had to get a real job. And there's a gentleman that lived next door to my sister that was a broker for Gelderman and Company. And he filled paper in the corn pit for ADM and all the big grain companies. And he said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, come down with me downtown Thursday morning after Memorial Day. You'll start as a runner and get paid." Maybe it was $2 an hour. That was 1980. I started as a runner at Gelderman and Company. Maybe 6 months later, started learning how to clear trays, became a phone clerk. Eventually, by 1983, I was the floor manager for Gelderman and Company and had about 35 people that worked underneath me doing phone clerks and clerk of works and runners and whatnot. That experience of being on the floor for 20 years was fantastic. It showed you every bit and piece of how everything's supposed to go. Eventually, though, in the year 2000, I got into the execution part of it when Patsystems came along. And funny enough, that Tom Thays, who started Patsystems, happened to be from where else but Fontana, Wisconsin, of all places. Total population, 1,820 people. We're now up to a grand total of about 3,400. But Tom Thays gave me a job, and I worked with him for about 10 years and learned the electronic side of the business, which was a big learning curve for me. My daughters, one of my 3 daughters, always had to help me with the computer to show me how to do certain things, just to how to enter into, log into our front end system. So yeah, it's been a learning experience over 40 something years that I think learning the basics though, starting out as a runner, talking with traders on the phone, taking orders from traders, personalities, developing relationships, all that put together, I feel my experience that I'm able to bring today through CQG when I go into a Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, whoever, some institutional client in New York. When I walk into a trading room, I know how to either back off or approach them in a certain way. You learn kind of the mindset of a trader, and it's different than a normal person. That money, people can act a lot differently when they're losing money or if they're making money. So I think that's all that has given me the experience to do what I do today and to enjoy it more than anything else. I mean, I wouldn't have done anything else. I would have been bored if I had to sit behind a desk all day. Kind of bored being in my basement. I wish I could get out after the, and hopefully we're going to get back to a little bit of normalcy in the future. But yeah, it was, I had a great opportunity to get into it. And the funny story is that in 1983, I hired my wife, who started as a runner for me, that then went on to work for ADM. And she became the only woman in the corn pit that was filling orders for ADM and Company. And I still get guys that ask me if I'm married to that redhead still. And I say, yes. And they say, she was mean. And I go, she's still mean. I'll stop there.
Well, we'll all know who comes storming through the door into the basement then in Fontana, Wisconsin in the near future. If we see an outbreak of violence, I'm sure the production team will swiftly move away from the scene. Okay, so, I mean, interesting, actually, the thing you bring out, Patrick, and I mean, you're talking about it as well, Paul, that ability to start at the very, very bottom and work your way up, something which we don't quite see in these days of, well, millennial graduate training schemes and so on. I mean, one of the early guests on this show actually was Dr. Robert Barnes, the man who went from doing a PhD and completing it at Cambridge University to being a runner for UBS on the life floor, which was where I first met him within a case of a matter of a few weeks. And that was certainly quite an upheaval for him, but it was a great way to learn the business. And I suppose that segues elegantly into the AFM, because the AFM has always been a great, I thought, grassroots movement for smaller futures exchanges all the way through to the very large ones to meet and convene. So how did you get involved with AFM originally? Let's start with Pat.
In about, I was with Patsystems, and I forget what year it was, but we had a fellow that ran the Asia region for us, Kaz, and Kaz said, hey, AFM's having a conference in Buenos Aires. You should attend it. I think it'd be good for you to meet some of these people. It's a good opportunity for Patsystems to get in there and get in front of them. So I did. It was really opened up. You saw the networking that can take place and the learning for all these guys that were there to meet people, but to meet the bigger exchanges or a similar exchange that was doing something they were trying to do and able to actually correspond and discuss and get ideas. And I thought, wow, this is really, it's more than important. It would also became more of, and Paul will say this too, it's a family, because after all the years now I've been kind of involved, you got to know everybody that's a member. You travel to a beautiful country and a beautiful city around the world, which is not too shabby to be able to do. And coming right up here to Budapest, coming up in a few weeks time, you'll know almost everybody in the room, and you look forward to meeting somebody new that just joined and introducing them to everyone. It's a great place. It's an open door for somebody to come in and learn so much. And I think, and this next one coming up in Budapest, as always, we go around the world to get the experts that are going to speak. Doc Sanders is going to be one of the keynote speakers out of Chicago, who is always enjoyable to listen to all his years of experience. And you always do walk away with learning something new. So yeah, I mean, Paul's been involved for a long time with AFM also, and Paul, I mean, the emergency markets, that's what it's all about. It's these new firms coming in and trying to start up, and it's not an easy thing to do these days. Obviously, when you have the Goliaths of CME and ICE, and for that matter, you could throw in the Singapore Exchange, but there is new ones that are popping up, and Small Exchange might be one of those, and they came up with the idea of doing small contracts, and not to go too much into the small exchange, but again, it's a new exchange that kind of popped up that you say, boy, how hard could that be to start up with the regulatory and everything else, the money, but people are doing it, and you're seeing more of it happen, I think, throughout the world than maybe just where I am in Chicago.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Patrick. So Paul, when did you get involved with AFM?
Been involved with AFM for 16 years. So I went to Trayport in 2005 in the early autumn. I remember it well, actually, because my first day, a Monday, was also the Monday of the final test against Australia when England won the Ashes that year. So I didn't do much work that day. I was tracking what was going on at the Oval. But so I was there, and I was picking up the whys and wherefores of energy trading. Basically, trading, I had a reasonable grounding in from foreign exchanges and money markets and things that I'd done in the past since 1977, 73 even. So, and I was looking at various conferences that were going on, and I saw this AFM, and it was small. It had almost every major asset class in it apart from energy. So I thought, well, we'll give it a try. And I convinced the powers to send me to the Istanbul 2007. It was, for me, something completely different. It was the first time I'd been to a conference where delegates were sitting effectively facing each other. That it was like wedding reception table layout in the hotel. Lots of lovely circles and encouragement to move around as well, which was absolutely fantastic for staying engaged, getting engaged and staying engaged. It was also refreshing. I was told early on in my attendance, we know what you do for a living. Do not come here and try and sell anything. Okay, fine. And that was blocked. No one was allowed to pitch. I think Pat might remember that as well. No one was allowed to pitch. You could say some, just plug your company because of contribution it makes to the flow of liquidity or whatever, but no obvious pitches. And that was good as well. And no matter where you were coming from, how small a sort of member of the community you were treated with great respect by everyone. And that I really liked. I walked to that. And that helps learning. You speak in the coffee breaks, you speak to people and that they're treating you on a one-on-one basis as an equal, and you will learn. If you don't learn, you shouldn't be there. I enjoyed that and been going ever since. Pat mentioned exotic locations. Oh my God. I got accused when I'd done my 10 years at Trayport. It was a little celebration of things, and so someone piped up from the back and said, "Well, I think the high spot of your 10 years has been the 10 wonderful international locations that bloody conference has taken you to." Fair enough. I'm not going to argue, but I had to work when I was there, didn't I? So yeah, it was a great little organization. And at the beginning, we were given a slot through relationship. We were given a slot effectively at the preamble to Bergenstock.
Right.
So we were invited to contribute as AFM in what they were doing at the time was an emerging markets forum,
right,
which was the opener for the main Bergenstock event. And that was good because that's somewhere where we really fitted in. So yeah, that's how I got in, and I'm still doing it now and still getting quite a kick out of it.
Yeah, the Bergenstock though, Patrick, that was, come on, it's on Lake Geneva,
yeah,
similar to Geneva Lake, but Bergenstock was just well, the conference itself was great, but the location of that whole thing, and over the years in Switzerland, that we changed it to a few different areas, but yeah, absolutely gorgeous. As well as going to, when I started as chairman, I think, Paul, that was Thailand, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, 11 years ago.
Yeah,
9 years ago, whatever. Yeah.
And I figured out that I've been involved since 17 years, I think, if I did the math right in my head, when they were at Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires,
yeah.
That was a great event, actually. Buenos Aires in particular. I remember it very, very well. Buenos Aires and Istanbul that you were talking about, Paul. And of course, he was always great. I mean, I used to be on the board of the SFOA back in the day. And it was one of the highlights of the Bergenstock meeting was always the AFM event as it was going along. But I suppose, I mean, that actually raises a question. We got a couple of questions that have come in from the audience. I'm going to take them in backwards orders. But first of all, let me just say something which is coming soon, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be this conference. It's the 25th anniversary AFM conference. It's going to be taking place on June the 6th to June the 7th in Budapest. The registration fee is incredibly reasonable. I actually think it's probably far too cheap, but at the same time, then I would say that because you get to be in the same room as the likes of Patrick Kenny, Paul Constantinou, and even me on occasion, with keynotes from incredible luminaries in the industry, particularly, of course, the great Dr. Professor Richard Sander, who is actually the father of the financial futures business. So if you're thinking of going somewhere in the next few weeks, if you're going to be anywhere near Budapest, whether you're in Buda or Pest, then make sure that you try and come to the AFM conference. We'd be delighted to see you. Now, that actually raises a question, because you mentioned this thing about SFOA and Bergenstock. Bergenstock, the biggest conference in continental Europe for, good grief, 30-something years. I remember I edited the book for the 25th anniversary of the association and so on. But you look at that, and I mean, the whole organization disappeared completely off the face of the earth. And that's obviously a massive concern these days. And therefore, we've got this great question from Jamil Navarroza. Thank you very much, Jamil. How does an industry association stay relevant after 25 years in the modern digital era?
Well, we've had to change, like every business had to change, right, Paul? That what we spoke about 15 years ago or 10 years ago, for that matter, is not what we're speaking about in Budapest coming up. The last one we just did in, help me, Paul, with
in Dubai in January.
Yeah, in Dubai in January, it was all about digital assets, and I learned a ton from it. But we try to keep the topics current, what's happening, who's doing what, and boy, have we, that changes from day to day, doesn't it? If you look at the crypto industry and what's happened when we're in Dubai, everything was great, and I think, I don't know, it was a few weeks after that when the whole FTX thing happened. So yeah, it's that our members, our membership fees, and I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, extremely reasonable. A one-time yearly fee that gets you into 2 or sometimes 3 different conferences throughout the year. Well worth it. But we try to keep it current, what's going on, and the speakers and keynotes are all current too. It's not going to be always Doc Sander, the father of the futures business. It's going to be probably some guy who's 27 years old that heads up crypto.com that's going to tell you how they make so much money.
An interesting angle. For example, so Paul, keeping that relevant. Well, in fact, if you think about it, you're part of a kind of a second or a third wave in AFM, insofar as when things started, it was all very, very much about raw commodities. Nobody mentioned, as you said earlier, electricity, energy, anything like that. And then that's actually a huge focus this year, along with emissions.
Yeah, it is correct. You look at the program for June, and I had a look today at a couple of previous conferences, and a lot of the headings, the overall headings of the panels, are pretty much the same. But when you then turn that page and look at the contents or the things that were going to be most important to discuss by any panel, they're completely different. They are modern, they're new, they're relevant. Clearing is a heading, but when you look at it, it's the changes in clearing, what clearing should be doing, and what technologies should it be using? Can it blend technology? That sort of stuff. And we are asking in the conference the same questions that are being asked in the market. We're not tailoring the conference to us, we're tailoring the conference to the market. And we do this all the time. It's never the same two conferences running. And I've been to other conferences where there's certain panels or certain speakers that, no. And we ban PowerPoint. PowerPoint or any such like is only acceptable to be used by prior request and proof that the only way someone can deliver a message is by using slides. And so it rarely happens. We are also able to get people to send video contributions if they can't make it. And we ran a hybrid event during COVID, and we have a couple of video contributions in 2 weeks' time. One I'm looking forward to is coming from Asia, which is about another new topic, I think, or a topic that's changing, which is exchange collaboration. And we're going to get a presentation from Singapore Exchange, Mike Sin, about the project they're running with Thailand. And that'll be fascinating. And he couldn't get here, but we're more than happy to have a video contribution. And so, yeah, we try and stay relevant. We ask questions, we question ourselves. And I think people find that refreshing.
Brilliant altogether. And therefore, let me move on. Thank you very much, Jamil, to the very furry Marianne Madeira, at least according to her image. Hello. What are the biggest challenges right now for emerging exchanges?
I'm going to say regulation right off the bat.
Yeah, regulation. And the fact they're small. It's difficult being small these days. And, you know, it's happened over the years. I'll just make sure I get it right. Yeah, in 2008, there were 382 exchanges across asset classes. 382. I would hazard that there's probably only about 150 now.
Yeah.
You know, the small ones either fail because they can't get the liquidity,
or they get gobbled up by the bigger ones,
or they get gobbled. Yeah, you know,
especially if they have something that the big ones don't have, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's what they're looking for. And to make them even bigger, but they take away the competition, a rival, and put it right underneath their umbrella, and there they go. CME's been pretty good at it, so is ICE. Regulation's one thing, but Paul, like you were saying, the clearing part of it, the clearing corp, just to get a clearing corp to want to clear your trades of your exchange, the amount of paperwork, time and effort, it's 2-3 years before someone gets up and going. That's just getting the clearing part of it up and going.
Yeah, I think as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
No, I've lost it. No.
Well, I think that the thing I was going to say, while you try to remember what you were going to say, sorry for interrupting, but the interesting thing also about the narrative, I mean, Paul, you were talking about clearing corporations, settlements and everything is, well, let's face it, when the AFM was born in 1998, you were talking about everything in the cash market world was settling T+3 all the way out to T+ forever. Whereas now we're in T+2, looking at T+1 in the US equity market and other places. And a lot of people are saying, well, why aren't we on T+0? And the crypto kitties are all telling us, well, we're settling in real time, which, by the way, hashtag it's complicated, but nonetheless does show a huge differentiation in the way you can be discussing the same panel headlines, but having very, very different dialogues year in, year out. And speaking of someone who's had a lot of different dialogue year in, year out that we all know, Jonathan Cowan. Hello all, says JC. Great to see you there, Jonathan. Thank you very, very much for joining the show. Delighted to have your feedback. Feel free to ask our illustrious panel of guests a question if you get a chance during the course of the next 20 minutes or so. Let me also actually, just while I'm here, break off and give a little guest a little break, because they've been talking a lot for the course of the last 25 minutes, actually 35 minutes, good grief. This week in Exchange Invest, we introduced into EI Weekly a new slot. It's a Book of the Week review. Our first book is How to Build a Stock Exchange, which is actually not a build plan model. If you want one of those, well, DM us, because that's actually what we do during the times when we're not doing live streams or producing Exchange Invest. But nonetheless, How to Build a Stock Exchange, the Past, Present and Future of Finance by Philip Roscoe is a really, really engaging read, a sort of socio-economic academic approach to understanding what goes on behind the building of an exchange. And it's not just about stock exchanges. There's an excellent chapter in there talking about the Chicago Board of Trade in 1848, amongst many other topics. Of course, Philip Roscoe was our guest on IPO-VID just a couple of weeks ago, so you can catch up to his issue when you wish to in our archives, which you can find wherever you're watching this, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube on IPO-VID. So back to the show, gentlemen. I mean, it's very interesting. It's complicated. There's a lot of growth out there in the world of exchanges. Is there anything in particular that you believe is a really hot spot that's developing at the moment in the AFM universe? Paul?
I'm not sure. Ask me again in 2 weeks' time, and I'll know. You know, it's I think, given the success we had in Dubai, which was all about digital, and we managed to get it was a fairly hybrid set of topics, and we got a hybrid audience for it, and everyone went away with ideas and thinking about how it could work to their advantage in their organizations. They might not do anything about it, but at least they were thinking about it and talking about it. So I think we can't get away from that. And the one thing I think will come up, and might not be there being talked about this time, but it's got to appear, and that's AI. Not sort of old-fashioned, rinky-dink, simple algorithm-based trading based on a price movement, but proper AI, proper machine learning. We hear about it being used for portfolio balancing and such like. It's a case of how far will it go, and if it's managed properly, then how dangerous is it for the small to medium-sized markets? Will it actually be their death knell? You know, it's the one thing that worries me a little bit. I do think of it as being a bit of an elephant in the room sometimes. We have machines. We're going to have machines trading with machines, and we're going to have the machines that are trading being regulated by machines, because we're now talking about regulation using AI. And it's going to be quite an interesting future, and I'll be sitting back watching it.
I do think that blockchain is still something, with all the negative stuff on cryptos, but blockchain is something I think that's going to be used, especially in clearing, and I think that's going to be a hot topic. The micro products have gained a lot of momentum, starting with the CME small exchange, and I know some of the exchanges around the world have started to offer smaller size products to bring in more of the retail. And, you know, we've seen that retail part of the business really grow over the last number of years. That's still growing, and then we've had a lot of panels on that, on retail and the growth of it, and how to do it correctly, I guess, is the way to do it. But yeah, I think those are the key things. And I think and I don't want to use this now because it was my thought for later on, maybe.
That's all right. You can hold on to it then. Hold on to it for a few minutes. Hold that thought for the time being, because Jonathan Cowan's coming back to us and saying, yes, he agrees. Philip Roscoe's How to Build a Stock Exchange is a great book. Thank you very much, Jonathan. And actually adds a comment on AI. AI for risk is a big subject presently. And certainly I think that's a very interesting one. I think there's also a big issue to do with AI. I mean, as we move on, that One of the things AI can do for small exchanges is automate a lot of function that requires less human input. And I mean, that's something actually, I mean, NASDAQ and NYSE have been doing, for instance, Intercontinental Exchange. I'm sure CME as well. They've had a huge amount of machine learning, AI applications monitoring markets for umpteen years. When you're a new exchange, the regulators demand that you have lots of humans who do it because you can't afford to scale that out. And it's actually quite funny because the large exchanges get a huge advantage because they can have 10 computers doing 10,000 contracts and they still only need 1 or 2 people in the room. Whereas the smallest exchanges still need 1 or 2 people in the room full time, even though they're not doing that much business. Sorry, Paul, I think you were going to add something.
I was just going to say it's great where it's being used in the big exchanges. For me, it's going to be a matter of how far forward it comes in terms of it's in the depths of the back office, it's in the depths of clearing. It does a fair bit now around portfolios, a bit of middle office stuff. When will it become the way to trade? When will a machine be trading? And that's what I'm intrigued to find out. You know, these technologies are doing other things at the moment. They write books, they write scripts. And I noticed the day before yesterday, I think it was, there was a US, I think he's a senator, whose address was written for him by one of these AI writing apps. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a far stretch, Patrick, but you know, algos is going down that road, right? It's AI, so to speak. You're putting it in, but then how would you say it? You have the race car, but then you got to put it on the right track, and that's where the AI part of it really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, we're going to have a show discussing that in just a few weeks' time because we've got the brilliant Ira Harris, who I'm sure you would remember well from the CBOT and the CME. He's going to be on the show, CME in particular, so he's going to be on the show discussing all sorts of issues to do with the growth and development of trading in the future. So, okay, we've got this conference coming up in 2 weeks' time. The membership of AFM is very robust, but it's also interesting because it has morphed a great deal over the course of the 25 years of the membership of the organization. How do you see the ways going forward in which you can manage to further develop not just the association, but also help smaller intermediate exchanges in emerging markets, which are not necessarily either small or intermediate, one has to say, further develop? Pat?
I'm a great believer in these exchanges have got to throw away some inhibitions about sharing. You quite often get an emerging exchange, even if it's a big exchange, an emerging exchange very reluctant to start sharing too much, a bit concerned about their image, the way they'll be regarded by bigger contemporaries. And also not sure if they're going to give too much of the game away and end up being sucked up. So there's just got to be a little more fortitude, and people have got to be more willing to come forward and talk more openly about, come to a conference like AFM, talk to your peers about the problems you're having. And, that's something we do try and bring out. We do like people to be able to say, given panel topic, we tried that, we didn't get it right. We tried that, didn't get it right because, and we did it again, and this time it don't look too bad. It may not be perfect. That for me is the most valuable dialogue you can have at a forum like AFM.
But you can also have people from the Clearing Corp, which we usually do. We've had over the years a couple of gentlemen from the Clearing Corp always there. Karen. Trying to think of her last name, from NFA, has always been in attendance. I think they have people like that there for the emerging exchange to ask questions. No questions stupid. Just how do I do this? How do I go about it?
Yeah.
Those type of people are willing to sit down and talk to you and hold your hand and take you through it.
Yes, that's a very interesting part of the presence. And again, goes back to, as you say, Paul, the way that events have traditionally been done, perhaps in the round or in different kinds of formats, rather than very much a sort of a stage with audience and the opportunity for it to be much more open. So what are we looking forward to then in a couple of weeks' time in Budapest? We've got a keynote from Richard Sander. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be absolutely gripping. What are the other events that are taking place in and around the forum?
I mean, apart from the work.
Well, in every respect, you can answer it outside of office hours or within them.
No, I mean we got a varied program, and that is available. You showed our little program page and screen just now. AFMall.net. Find the conference on there. It's a very varied program for the best part of 2 days, with the opportunity on at the night before we start, so the Monday night, the 5th, there's cocktails up high in the Marriott, overlooking the river and the bridges and all the other lovely old buildings. And then on Tuesday, after the first day, we are having a gala dinner in the Hungarian Academy of Science, which promises to be quite a nice affair, quite a lush affair.
Yeah,
sounds marvelous.
And then it's back to work on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, yeah. Well, it's a fairly intense 2-day conference with a large number of panels, everything from carbon markets through clearing, through all sorts of other developments, a couple of keynotes. It's going to be very, very interesting. I mean, Pat, you're the chairman. What are you hoping to see developing in AFM after 25 successful years, looking forward to the next 25 successful years?
We always add 2 or 3 new members. I think over the last number of years anyways, we've added a couple of new members. If we can continue to add 2 or 3 members every year and continue that growth, that keeps us healthy. It was hard for us. We had some real challenges with the what happened between Russia, and we had some exchanges there. And, we had to make some decisions that were not easy decisions to make. That people that have been members with us for a very long time, but you had to think of the other membership. So anyways, new membership coming up, that would be great. And again, keeping the topics current, and that's up to Christy, our illustrious secretary that does everything in the world, and Paul and myself and the rest of the members to come up with, good conferences throughout the year.
Yes.
But I'm going to tell you the story about the gala. When we talked about the end of the conference, we have the gala dinner. So the reason why I'm the most interesting man in the futures industry is that, and it was in Budapest, I believe, too. I showed up to the gala dinner with a tuxedo on. It's a gala dinner. So I had a black tie affair. I showed up, and I was the only one with a black tie on, except for the waiters. So John Lothian thought that started my whole most interesting man in the world from there, but kind of emerged from that.
It's not the end of the world. You're not the only man to have turned up in a tuxedo at a gala dinner somewhere and to find out that it was only lounge suits. The standards of the world this day, they're just collapsing, Patrick. It's dreadful altogether. Yes, you've been upholding good and reasonable sartorial elegance. So, gentlemen, we've reached that point in the show where, well, actually, let's just pause to say thank you very much, Jonathan Cohen. Jonathan's noting the idea about digital custody. Yes, that's another huge issue in the AI and future technology firmament that we're going to be looking at in the years to come, I think, as well as in the near future. So let me ask you that question that I ask of all our guests when we reach the conclusion of a show. Let me start with you, Paul. Where does the capital market revolution go next?
Oof. Yes, I think it has definitely got to continue harnessing technology, making sure it's making the best use of available technology and not to be afraid of experimenting with it. I express a concern on AI, but that's me generally. I do express concerns about AI. But, it's there. The blockchain type of stuff is there. And I think it's almost beholden on the capital markets to try and harness that, because all powerful stuff. And if they can make for a more efficient marketplace, then I think it's to the benefit of everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Patrick, let me presage that, in fact, because the question, where does the capital market revolution go next, of course, relates back to your own career, doesn't it? Because Patsystems, co-founded by Thomas Days was indeed the man who was the co-author of my original book, Capital Market Revolution, way back when in the late 1990s. So it's a very circular discussion all the way. Where do you think the capital market revolution goes next?
I think it continues to go the way it's going because it's so healthy. And I think we had some really big tests, didn't we, through the pandemic and the amount of volumes that were being cleared during those days. I think that we have to stay open. FTX was a good example, too, that, their way was the way, or the highway, basically. I think we have to be open, and Walt Lucan did, I think, a very good job heading up FIA to say, maybe there's something there that they do that we can embrace and make what we have even better. So continuing to make it better, but something that's not broken, doesn't need to be fixed, so to speak. But, if we can make it even stronger, that's great. So I think we just continue on and continue to learn from the cryptos and some of the newer people that are entering the markets, that we stay open about it, I guess, and have those discussions and move on. If you would have asked me this question 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was on the floor of the Board of Trade, that everything would be electronic, I would have, you did laugh and say it might not even catch on. Well, but it works.
Quite incredible. We haven't got to our flying cars from the Jetsons yet, but nonetheless, we've got there. Very interesting embrace, Patrick. I think you're echoing the words of, I do believe it was Sergei Diaghilev, the great choreographer in the world of ballet, who famously said that I don't create, God creates, but I steal, but I will steal from anywhere to do so. I'm not suggesting intellectual property theft, but I think what he was saying was that he embraced, in his Russo-English fashion, the idea of using different trends across the board in order to manage to bring together new and exciting opportunities to build better from what we already have. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard today AFM 25 years on from the magnificent duo of the president of AFM, Paul Constantinou. Thank you very much, Paul. And the chairman of AFM, Patrick Kenny, coming to us from the wonders of the Midwest, not that many miles away pro rata from Indianapolis, where, of course, you'll get to see sustainable fuels in action during the course of Sunday afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that we're all going to see you in Budapest in the near future in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, I'm looking forward also to seeing you next week. We've got another fascinating, fabulous, and incredibly exciting show. We will be discussing markets for the next generation with a man who was just inaugurated into the FIA, that's the organization run by Walt Lucan, Hall of Fame. That is going to be Guidon Hirchten, the head of the Hirchten Group, and I think a living legend in the world of exchange-traded futures and options markets, who's done so many things. That's going to be a fascinating show, ladies and gentlemen. This show, in the meantime, is a wrap. I just want to say thank you very much to all of those of you who contributed today. Thank you so much, Jonathan Cowan, for your multiple interventions, to Marianne Madera, to Jamil Navarrosa, and also let me say thank you as well to our trio in production, including Herminia, for your excellent work today. My name is Patrick L. Young. We're going off to continue to build markets the world over. In the meantime, you can read all the daily news and Exchange Invest every day, or if you just want to know about the world of digital asset markets, then look up for our Substack, Bit Carnage, also out Monday to Friday. My name is Patrick L. Young. I wish you all a great week in blockchain, life, and markets.